So, little known fact, the last time we tried to record, my microphone wasn't plugged in. So, that's an episode you'll never hear because number one, you wouldn't be able to hear it.
Like, all it sounded like this is the best part about it because the audio came out and it was just like me talking to myself the entire episode, which is so funny. I can't even imagine how ridiculous that sounds.
Just really good. Just really, I mean, and then there are parts where for some reason, I don't know what happened, but then your mic went out. And so then there's just moments of dead silence. And then you come back in responding to yourself, but no one knows. And I think what's so funny is, like for the amount of people who listen to this show, our poor producer who is like looking at this, she's like, oh, this cannot go out. Like, what are you guys sending me? Like, am I being punked right now? Like, this is real.
Number one podcasters right here. Killing
Trust us. We'll help you. We know what we're doing. Oh, God. Talk about reasons that'll drive you to drink. Dun, dun, dun.
is what we are talking about today. It's kind of a unique episode for us because it doesn't always 100% relate to divorce. But guess what, listeners? We're bringing it in full circle. We are bringing drinking too much into the divorce and how we can work around that and better ways to move forward. And no, it's not going to be you can never drink. We're not saying that.
Hell no. I'm glad that we're recording this episode in the morning because I think nothing would be more uncomfortable for me than to be sitting here having this conversation while my goblet of wine is warming between my hands. I'm like, so talk to me again about alcohol.
I would love to see that.
Oh, okay. We got to get it together. We got to take some deep breaths. Bring on our super smart guest. I mean, I'm imagining she's super smart. I mean, Jesus. I mean, I don't know. People probably think we're super smart, and dumbass over here recorded a whole episode without a microphone. Again, trust us. We got you. Oh, we promise we know what we're talking about. Okay. We're going to put on our serious brains, our serious faces, and let's talk about the alcohol. All right. So, alcohol and divorce go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Oh, you literally read my mind. Probably
Hmm.
in the most stressful situations, you think, "Man, I really need a drink right now," or if just one drink will take the edge off.
Okay. Right. But that's the thing. Here comes the question. Do you really need the drink right now? Right. So, today, we're going to talk about what happens when you start drinking too much and how do you reframe your relationship with alcohol. And spoiler alert, don't get so nervous. This is not about becoming 100% sober.
Yep, exactly. So, how not to suck it, divorce listeners, please welcome to our show, Colleen Cashman. She's known as the Hangover Whisperer. She's a recovery certified master coach, host of the It's Not About Alcohol podcast, and author of Life Off the Label, a handbook for creating your own brand of health and happiness. Colleen, welcome to How Not to Suck It, Divorce.
It is so good to be here. I love you guys. I love your show, and I'm honored to be a guest.
So, little known fact, well, maybe it's more known. I don't know, but I loved hearing this, Colleen. You've also been through your own divorce.
Twice.
So I was about to say it's divorce. I want to start there. So let's
Okay.
talk about the correlation between divorce and the overindulgence of alcohol. So, what did you experience?
Well, the first time I got a divorce, I would never have said that alcohol was a factor in the way my marriage ended. I was married 22 years. And honestly, when you go through a divorce, it's super stressful. And I didn't have the time to drink. When life was good, I was a bottle of wine a day drinker every single night. I didn't really think that was a problem. I look back now and see how I was growing dependent on it because of the physiological mechanisms as well as habit formation. People that are like, well, I'm not dependent. It's like, well, you can form a habit in 3 days on vacation about where you like to get your coffee from. So the correlation is just simply that I was using alcohol to cope, not understanding what that meant. And it just robs you of a sense of power and integrity. You know, it was worrying during the divorce if the husband, because of course now your ex-husband thinks you have a drinking problem because he knows you. And so now you've got lawyers involved and things get messy and accusations and nasty things are said. So, yeah, I went through my first divorce using alcohol. And if I had a night to myself, I'm like going out with the girls. And because that's how I thought I was supposed to relax and whatever. And it was fine. But with my second divorce, I knew I wasn't going through that again, like sideways. I was going to walk through that process with integrity. And that was when it was 4 years before I actually got a divorce because I decided to deal with my drinking problem first and get right with myself before I even decided if I was leaving the marriage. And so my second divorce process was so much more pleasant, kind, okay, as hard as it was, because I was no longer out of my power, if that makes sense.
You know, as a divorce lawyer, I see that. I see this spectrum of people and how they're using alcohol to cope. I see, on the one hand, the people that just cannot stop it. It's this train that has left the station and they can't slow it down and they're drinking all the time. And then I see the other spectrum where they're okay. They're having a few drinks here or there, or maybe they're blowing off steam on the weekend with a girlfriend or a guy friend, whatever it is. But I see all different things. And I think that after doing this for over 16 years, I'm able to kind of look at a client and know a little bit whether they're drinking too much. So I'm curious to know about everything you've studied because your background in this is super interesting. I read you have a BS in biology and chemistry education and a certification as women's functional and is it integrative medicine professional, right?
Integrative, yeah. Mhm,
Okay. And
mhm.
so that's so interesting. Tell me about that background and how that basically brings in the alcohol, the biology and the chemistry component.
Well, in our culture, if you look at the context, alcohol is a drug, and it's the only drug you can buy at the store without a doctor prescription. And I'm not saying we need to regulate or do anything different. I'm just saying that we have a lot of mixed messages about alcohol. No one thinks that they can get addicted to alcohol because in our culture, there's two types of drinkers. You're either a normal drinker or you're an alcoholic. And if you're a normal drinker, then you don't need to worry about it. And so I came into what is now referred to as alcohol use disorder is the term in the DSM-5 for basically it's a mental health issue where you drink more than you think you should drink. And so it becomes a disconnect between your intentions in the morning and your behavior in the evenings. And it's perpetuated with shame and beating yourself up and this belief that you can't control yourself. Addiction is actually a state of belief. You know, we can call it a disease if you want to cover it under health insurance. But the idea that you have a disease if you haven't drank in 20 years because you're sober, like that, it doesn't make a lot of sense. What you're doing is identifying and telling yourself a story that you can't control yourself with alcohol. And that is the crux of dependency, is the belief that I need a drink, just like you led with, Morgan. But what happens is that the brain likes to make habits and people don't realize thoughts are habits too. And just because you believe something doesn't make it true. And what happens is alcohol can provide relief. It can, especially for the type A, high functioning, high stress, go, 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 dopaminergic brain, where your brain's 3 steps ahead of your body. People are like, "Well, I don't have an off switch with alcohol." No, alcohol is your off switch. Like,
Mhm.
that's the thing that gives you permission to slow the f down and relax, and so the brain learns to associate stress relief with alcohol. And so my approach to alcohol is like nothing that's really going on anywhere. I'm looking for people. I don't want to say I'm the only one on the planet that is actually a drinking coach. It's not about the alcohol, it's about the reasons that you're drinking. And it is about the developing of new habits. You know, you're drinking for a reason. Over drinking is a symptom of stress and limiting beliefs and agreeing to things you don't actually agree with and overcommitting yourself and ignoring your own body. And so if you solve those upstream issues, then the drinking sitch just takes care of itself. That's why I say, like in my program, drinking 80% less is a side effect. of getting what I call emotionally sober. So the science is of emerging with neuroplasticity. One of the biggest myths is that you'll hear in like the sober community is you can't unpickle your cucumber. Once you've had an alcohol addiction, you will always struggle and you'll have that addiction the rest of your life. If you ever drink again, you're going to be living in a van down by the river. The truth is, you can't unpickle a cucumber, but your brain is not a cucumber. It is always learning. You are always developing new habits. And in fact, science studies show that the gray matter in the prefrontal cortex is denser 6 months to 1 year after someone has broken an addiction or a dependency. It's a spectrum than in people who've never had to overcome a dependency, because that is a learning process as well.
Okay. There was a lot there, and there's something that I wanna back up and talk about first, which is I'm imagining you know way more about this than I do. You said that, during your first divorce, you'd go out with girlfriends like we all have, and it's like, "Oh, fuck, I need a drink tonight," right? And you think like, "I'm just" or Morgan, you said it too. I have clients who just go and blow off steam by having a drink. Here's my question. Are you really blowing off steam? What really happens in your brain with alcohol?
Okay. Alcohol is a drug and it is a biphasic depressant drug, which means it depresses the central nervous system. Biphasic means that small amounts and large amounts have opposite effects. The biphasic line is 0.055 blood alcohol level. So there are some therapeutic benefits. Your mind does shut down. You're not making that up. You do feel more relief. A lot of that is driven by your beliefs and associations with alcohol and being
It's
out of the
making me
stressful
feel a lot better
situation.
with how much wine I drink some nights. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yes, thank you, Colleen. Thank you.
Yes, it is a drug and some people like it, and I enjoy drinking very much now. I very much enjoy a Friday night with a bottle of wine and some friends and all of that. But people don't understand that how to use the drug properly. So, yes, alcohol can help you relax. But when you cross the line between buzzed to intoxicated, now it's a depressant drug that shuts down your central nervous system. Your brain has to release cortisol and adrenaline and norepinephrine so that you don't get so relaxed you forget to breathe. And so, this idea in our culture that more alcohol equals more fun drives people to continue drinking, thinking that their buzz is that way, when in fact, learning how to drink mindfully, where once you feel the buzz, you're done. Like you can allow the buzz to go off, but your buzz is like a bucket. Once it gets full, now it's just overflowing with cortisol. And that's why you wake up in the middle of the night after the buzz wears off with all this anxiety because your cortisol levels are jacked up. And then the next morning, your dopamine levels are low. And so now you're going through the day, everybody's a pain in the ass, everything's stressful, and you slide into happy hour and think, well, I'll just have a drink to blow off some steam. Alcohol has addictive properties. And so it can suck you into that if you don't understand how to use it. And most people don't understand that the side effects begin, they can happen at any time. But for most people, you can drink safely as long as you're in that buzz zone and not continuing to drink and your hand to mouth autopilot system's going. And you're like, oh, it's a bad week and a blah, blah, blah. And you're just throwing them back. Well, now you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
Okay, that's awesome. But what you're saying makes sense, right? Because I put myself in your shoes. I have a very stressful job. I'm not an over drinker generally, but there's a fine line of relaxation, one drink in, maybe a drink and a half. And then for me, especially the older I get, the 2.5 drinks to 3 drinks, like that is a bad area for me. Nothing good comes from that from me. So kind of if I'm hearing you correctly, you're not saying all drinking is bad. You're saying that there's basically a line in which you kind of cross over from being relaxed. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. In my program, in addition to all the skills of emotional sobriety, we do mindful drinking because most of us learn to drink in a frat house. Go, go, chug, chug, drink, drink. And when you are a high achieving go getter and you bring that dopaminergic attitude, what that is you don't have a high tolerance for alcohol. You have a high tolerance to ignore what's going on in your body. If you can go hours without even noticing you have to pee, then you are at risk of continuing to drink and not really noticing that what did feel good is now feeling less. You feel a little buzzy in your head or disconnected. You can't keep the thought pattern or you're repeating yourself. You're not really enjoying yourself anymore. You were enjoying yourself. And now you're just playing the role of somebody who's enjoying themselves and you're not paying attention. So that's why mindful drinking, learning, relearning how to enjoy alcohol as a pleasure is it just takes mindfulness. And I use air quotes around just, I mean, there's a lot of factors and components here, but it's really just about not paying attention to your body and blowing past your own stop line because your stop sign because you weren't paying attention.
Okay. So since this is a podcast about divorce, let's bring it to the, what so much of what you said, I'm like my brain was like lighting up because so many people are struggling. I mean, all of this is like the emotional stop sign, right? And a lot of what people who are probably currently struggling with, because a lot of people who listen to our show, Colleen, haven't yet started the divorce process. And a lot of people haven't decided whether or not they're going to start the divorce process. So they are heavy into the phase of picking and choosing what am I going to look at? And then am I ignoring the feeling that I have to pee, right? No, really. It's that same thing. And stay with me, guys, as I'm going to make this make sense for you. I promise I'm smart. But, you know, let's talk about ignoring you have to pee. You know you have to pee, right? You feel it in your bladder. You're like, I got it, but I'm fine. I'm fine. I can hold it. I'm good. I'm good. It's fine. I don't want to use the bathroom here. It could be gross. There's a line. It's so inconvenient. But your body is like, "Bitch, you gotta pee." What's the difference when we're in a marriage and we know we're not happy and you're like, "I can do this though. It's fine. It's not a good time. It's not a good time to talk about it. It's fine. Line to the bathroom's too long. It's fine. I'm good." It's not I don't it's I'm not really that miserable.
Yeah.
What I see legally, and I think, I was kind of confused coming into this discussion of like, where are we going here? And also, selfishly, Colleen, I like a glass of wine once in a while. I mean, but now that you brought it full circle about the stop sign, like, do you blow past your stop sign? That's where, things go haywire. That's what I'm seeing. Blowing past the stop sign in a divorce is really tricky for clients because their heightened emotions are so much already. And then if you blow past the one drink is fine, maybe even depending on your body, maybe it's two is okay, whatever it is. But when you blow past that stop sign, what happens is the anxiety it heightens. Your decision making probably isn't as good. Sometimes I find that my clients that have done that the night before and they're trying to talk to me and make a good decision in their divorce case, that they're kind of unable to get there or they're making rash decisions. So I'm now understanding why we're talking about this. I get it because I see it in my clients and I see the ones that go past the stop sign and really what it does to the divorce process, it makes it worse. It makes it worse. So just know when you're out for the night, you've got to be careful if you're in a heightened state already of emotions like a divorce.
What
Well, okay, Colleen, what I really wanna know is I think, like, what everyone is thinking right now who's listening is, "Okay, great. What the fuck do I do differently? What do
Yeah.
you want me to do?" Right? Like, I don't wanna be that person you're describing. I
Yep.
realize that I might be blowing through the stop sign. However, yeah, this is really stressful. And yeah, my friends are going to want to take me out. And you know what, you assholes, I want my brain to turn off. Andrea, you talk on every other episode like binge watch a TV show to turn off your brain at night. That's what I'm fucking trying to do. So Colleen, what do these people do differently?
Well, you get to decide if you want to get through this or if you want to allow this to transform you and set yourself up. I know for years I was just getting through one shit show after another.
Mhm.
And you wake up at 50 and you didn't really decide where you are. You don't feel like you're in control of your life. And so you have to make a decision to choose yourself. And that's hard work. That's like babysitting a 2-year-old who doesn't want to go to bed and also has a driver's license and likes vodka. You have to
Yeah.
decide if
Scary.
I'm right. But divorce is stressful. And like the way I feel in my body, the more stressed I am, the less I can tolerate alcohol. There's no right amount of alcohol to drink. When I've got plenty of sleep. My stress bucket, there's plenty of room. I can add a little bit of alcohol, maybe even a third glass of wine, and not ever think anything bad about it. But the last thing I would ever do is pour alcohol on a dysregulated nervous system in my own body because it's dysregulated for a reason. And what happens when you blow through your stop sign as a general lifestyle rule is you get emotionally constipated. All of these little things are just compounding, which is why, you get outsized emotional reactions. You can't deal with one thing at a time. It's if your spouse says, they walk in the door late, it means you don't love me. As like, no, I'm 5 minutes late. But when you don't stop to deal with your stress, like emotions are like poop. You gotta like flush that shit. And when you're going through a divorce, there is a lot of things that you have to process in order to get back to yourself, to get back to that regulated nervous system, to stand and stay in your power. And so trying to blow through life at 100 miles an hour during a divorce, and then the one night that you have to yourself, go out and get shit faced drunk and then it's like you're running on a deficit, and it sucks to go through a divorce or relationship issues, the decision to mend or end. I get it. But if you don't stop and give yourself the time, you're just digging yourself a hole.
Okay. I agree. More importantly, though, I'm going to send you a certificate soon because this was the first time that we've had the word poop on our podcast. So, Mazel Tov, we'll have like a whole ceremony about that at some point. So that that was a first. And and I can't believe we've gotten this many episodes without talking about it, frankly. A few things. Number 1, something came into my mind. We don't pay attention to when we are emotionally unwell. If somebody were physically sick, right? If you're like, the big, if anyone's taking like antibiotics, or like, oh, I can't have alcohol because I'm on antibiotics, right? Or if you're getting over a cold, you would know I probably shouldn't drink a lot tonight because my body's healing from something. Okay, but what's the difference? Right? If your brain is healing from something, we don't think that way. We do the opposite. Isn't that so? That's just something to think about. Something else that you said, the emotional constipation, that made me think. Never thought I would say this, but that made me think of myself. And I typically don't talk about my constipation, but that's what my panic attacks were. You hold it in, you hold it in, you hold it in. And I'm mentioning this because we have so many listeners who write to us saying that they're relating to a lot of the mental health stuff we talk about, and especially the panic disorder, because going back to ignoring the fact you have to pee. I mean, Morgan, I'm sure you see this all the time. People are falling apart in your office because they've been ignoring it, ignoring it, ignoring it, ignoring it. And then all of a sudden, the floodgates open.
Yeah. I mean, this week alone, I had a woman come in and talk to me, nicest woman. And she was such a mess. And she said, she was like apologizing for crying in my office. And I said, this is what happens every day so stop it. Like, this is normal. But she said, my plan was to cry all the way coming down to see you. And then by the time I got here, have it together, but apparently I don't. And I said, well, it's really not up to you. It's your body's response to kind of what's going on in your life. You can't control it. So what Colleen's saying is true. It's like if you have somebody in that emotional state going through the divorce, add alcohol, which is a drug on top of it, and add a lot, you could have big problems with the divorce process. And that's what we're talking about. So Colleen, I know this isn't about 100% being sober, but How do we know if someone is drinking for the wrong reasons during the divorce process? Like, how does someone identify, like, ooh, this could be me kind of a thing?
If you have to ask the question, the end. If you're
Ooh.
asking, am I drinking for the wrong reasons? You already know the answer. If you're thinking about alcohol, alcohol use disorder is a thinking problem, not a drinking problem. Alcohol is just the drug of choice. It's the symptom of unmet and unprocessed needs. Okay. If you have to ask the question, there's your answer.
That was that was intense.
Yeah, my
Um,
brain is still stuck on it's a thinking problem, not a drinking problem. So
yeah.
I'm like trying to even process it myself.
Okay, so Morgan, on that note, there's something
Yeah.
that I want to tell you on Colleen's website. There's this quote that like really stands out, and it stands out intentionally because on her website it's like a bigger text and in bold, and it says, "If you are not actively managing your emotional needs, they are managing you."
Mm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, right?
Ugh,
So
makes me feel so uncomfortable.
if you're
I don't like
if
it.
you're
Oh,
that's
make the text smaller. It's yelling at
no,
me.
no, because if you're asking the question, there's anxiety there, there's a feeling there, there's a knowing there. And your brain is trying to rationalize, well, how many drinks does the CDC say? And how much does my friend drink? And well, how much did I drink last week? So then much should I like I don't drink that. Like you're trying to think your way out of a feeling problem. And so your body is telling you, I feel like we've had too much, and your brain is like, nah, nah.
Just
Like
like
looking
your
for evidence.
marriage, just
Right.
like your marriage,
Yeah. And
right?
that's where the disconnect occurs, is because you're trying to tell yourself a story that your body's calling bullshit on.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of that in the divorce process. And before, like Andrea said, we have a lot of listeners that are confused on whether to stay or go, whether they can stick it out, etc. And that comes into play all the time. All right, but Colleen, this show, we love this show because we are an action step kind of a show. So, related to your topic that we're talking about today, let's talk about action steps. What are three things that someone can do right to reframe their relationship with alcohol during the divorce process?
Well, honestly, I think most divorce attorneys would agree with me. And from having done it twice, if you can just stop drinking and punt the can down the road as far as what my relationship with alcohol is, in terms of how do I get through this without it, the real question is how are you going to get through it with it? Because it's an added stressor. It is keeping you from processing. It is keeping you from feeling like you're in integrity and showing up as your best self. So that's the first thing is right now you probably don't have time to do a huge deep dive into your relationship with alcohol because you're going 100 miles an hour and everything's changing. So, but if that's not available to you, then I would see that as an invitation to get support, like a coach. And it like don't go to sobriety school. Don't go, it's not an alcohol problem, it's a relationship with yourself problem. Drinking is a side effect of your emotional state. So, some sort of therapy, ideally some sort of coaching where somebody moves you into action and we're not just making sense of why you drink because your husband's an asshole. Like there's so many ways to get support, but getting out of your head and finding that trusted person to hold space, hold you accountable, give you guidance, but getting yourself support. I think, short of trying to do it yourself and just quit drinking and keep going, if you can do that. But if otherwise, getting yourself support so that you feel like you're making yourself a priority and you get guidance, because when you are emotionally activated, you're thinking in your amygdala, your prefrontal cortex goes offline, and you need rational thought during a time like divorce. So, getting support and then finally taking care of your body, like basic self care shit. 8 hours of sleep, not an option. You got a lot of emotions to process. So, sleep and movement. If you can't go to the gym or do all the things, just get outside for a walk. But just basic self care practices, and know that this time is temporary. And the more you suck it up and deal with yourself and take care of yourself now, the easier the better the outcomes and the quicker you're going to get through it.
So so in short, and to simplify it, it is the 3 things that you can do right now. Number 1, put it down. Stop. Kick the can down the road. Just don't fucking drink that much. It should, don't. Number 2, get the support that you need. Take care of your heart and brain and talk about it. But find the right place to talk about it. Maybe not, your drunk friend might not be the best person to have this conversation with. She might make a mean margarita, but, maybe not the one to discuss these feelings with. Hey, that's why you listen to our show, right? That's why you can listen to Colleen's podcast. That's why we're going to get to this in a second, but there are groups that you can join. And the third, and what was,
Self-care.
well, the third one, self care. Go to sleep, bitch. Sleep.
Go to sleep, bitch.
Go to sleep. Take a walk. We talk about taking walks all the damn time. I think we're going to add take a shower. Take a shower, get your car washed, take a walk.
Because when you do those things, you start to feel there are things you can control. And what you're really wanting when you drink is to escape the feeling of a lack of control. You can't control all the big things, but you can control if you're making your lunch tomorrow. You can control getting off your damn phone and going to bed early. You can control taking a shower, taking a walk. And the more you act as though you are in control, the more you feel in control, the more you think in control, the faster you get through all of this.
I couldn't agree more. It sounds so simple. And Colleen, we thank you for coming on our podcast and actually giving us a really unique topic that not a lot of people are talking about and how it relates. And for our listeners, Colleen's not saying it. We're not saying it. We're not saying stop drinking. We're saying at least know what it does to your body and how that might affect your divorce process and ultimately make the best decision for you.
Exactly. Okay, I mentioned it before, and I want to give you time to explain to everybody. Number 1, there's lots of ways that people can get in touch with you, but what I would love for you to talk about briefly is the groups that you run. So if somebody is listening and they're like, "Okay, I want that support. What does it look like, Colleen, if I want you to talk to me?"
I do a free consultation for anybody. It's a two-way interview to assess where you're at, where you want to be, and the gap between the places. And we talk about skills. We talk about what your obstacles are going to be. If you're a good fit for my program, then we talk about it then. Bottom line, though, is, before you would book a call like that, you would just listen to my podcast. It's called It's Not About the Alcohol. And I dive into all of these topics there. You've been on there. We talk about wonderful things. And then I'm on social media. If you've only got 2 to 3 minutes, I'm at Hangover Whisperer on TikTok and Instagram. And so you can really learn a little bit more about me there. But I do one-on-one consultations. And when you sign up for that, I'm going to send you, it's going to rain in your inbox with my trainings before we get on the call so that when we get on the call, you already know I don't have to talk as much. You get to talk. And so those calls are very valuable, whether you want to work with me or not, because I'll point you in the right direction. Not everybody needs to join, a coaching program for alcohol, but, some people need to quit entirely for a little while, and I can refer you to that. I teach mindful drinking, but I've got a lot of resources.
And I'm glad that you made that distinction because I do think that it's important that we say, obviously, none of us sitting here are doctors, and there are people who do need to stop drinking completely. So with that disclaimer, we're not having that conversation right now. This was a conversation about everything that we just talked about. Number 1, you guys, her TikToks have millions of views. You got to go to her TikTok. It's incredible. Obviously, it's going to be linked in the show notes. Before I let you go, I have to tell you something really funny, Colleen. I'm on your email list, and I got an email, I don't know, a month or so ago that the title spoke to me so much. I was like, that's me. That's me. Well, yeah, it actually was me. It was the email promoting my episode on your show. I'm like, now that's an email I relate to. You stupid bitch.
Well,
So panic attacks and whatever. And I'm like, see, I knew I liked this girl. I
yeah.
feel this.
Yeah, you should
Dumbass.
check out my guest this week on my podcast, Andrea Rappaport.
I'm like,
Mhm,
love it.
mhm,
Sounds so
mhm.
familiar.
Yep.
Oh God.
We're all narcissists. Sometimes I listen to my own podcast and I'm like, that's a good damn podcast. Because it's like we
I'll
forget.
agree
Like
to that.
I think we remember and we forget. That's life. I'll know something. I'll record a podcast and I'll listen to it. I'm like, that is a good idea. And I'm like, bitch, you wrote the podcast. Like it's just in different contexts. Humans are funny.
We
Humaning
are
is
funny.
hard.
We are funny. Well, Colleen, we really lightened things up. Thank you so much. We'll make sure that your handles and your website and all of that is in the show notes. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this morning. And I think everyone's going to be a lot more, I don't know, emotionally wiser. We're going to get that emotional constipation right out of you. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have to admit that when we started recording this podcast, I said to Andrea, why are we talking about this? Like, does this make any sense? How does this relate to our divorce show? Now I
Mm-hmm.
get it. Now I get
Yeah.
it. And I can appreciate the fact that I see clients that maybe overindulge and it really affects their divorce. But I do appreciate the message. And the message is there's no judgment here. You have to see your own body and where you're at emotionally and figure it out. But I agree with Andrea. There are many people that just have to stop drinking. And this just gives you the tools to figure out where you're at. So if you like our show, if you want to share it, we would love it. We have a private community that you can join. Please rate and review us. We always answer every DM.
Absolutely. We love you. We really do. We want to be here for you. We want to help you in every way. We're going to give you the information so that you navigate your divorce in the healthiest way possible. And sometimes that means talking about the parenting agreement. Sometimes that means helping you with money. And other times that means talking about alcohol. So we get it. We get that. We get the full picture here. We know that there are going to be days where you feel like you can't do this. There's going to be days where you're like, fuck mindful drinking. I'm ready to get obliterated and possibly wake up in an alley if I wake up. But as Morgan says, you want to wake up in the morning. If you, every day that you get is another day that you have the ability to make a change and to become a happier and healthier person. It's not going to happen in an instant. It's a process, and we're going to support you the entire way.
Exactly. Remember, divorce is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Some days it's day by day, other days it's hour by hour. But regardless, you can do this. You can do these hard things and you will get through this. So remember, you have got this and we have got you.